So one of the most important aspects of choosing a dash cam is whether you're going to buy the suction cup or you're going to buy the more permanent mount. So keep in mind the way these dash cams work is when you turn on the ignition, the dash cam itself will turn on and automatically start recording. So that's a little bit of an indication that the way these dash cams are designed is they're meant for a more permanent fixture of the car. So that is not as convenient when you're doing this with a suction cup. Notice also that with the suction cup you have a lot of loose wires that are just hanging out there, whereas with the permanent mount you're really hiding the wires under the upholstery and it really becomes very clean and out of sight. Now the permanent mount is still removable. What you're doing is you're using a sticky to fasten a plastic fastener to the windshield, and the dash cam itself hooks onto that plastic fastener. Now if you're moving this dash cam from car to car, you're going to have to use fish wire or dental floss to saw off the sticky itself from the windshield. Number two is you want to get something that is hidden and discreet and just blends in with your car. So you'll notice here again I have the two cameras side by side, the suction cup and the permanent mount. And you'll notice that the suction cup will always hang a little bit lower. So it becomes a little bit more obvious to passerbys that you have a camera there. Whereas if I zoom out, you'll notice the permanent mount almost blends in and you can't even see the camera itself. So it's very discreet at all angles. Number three is you want to be very careful of how cameras are advertised. So cameras will advertise themselves as 1080p, but there is a difference between true 1080p and also interpolated 1080p. So I'm going to show you two video segments here, one that is true 1080p and one that is interpreted 1080p. And you'll notice that the interpolated 1080p is very grainy. As you can see here, this is the interpolated 1080p and it is slightly grainy, though it is still fairly serviceable. So the difference obviously it will be in the price, and these interpolated 1080p's will go as low as probably about $30. So you could get a fairly decent camera for $30. In many cases, however, when they advertise, they do not distinguish between what is true 1080p and what is interpolated 1080p. So you really can't even tell. So lots of times you really have to read the reviews and distinguish that all by yourself. As a general rule though, anything that's below $70 will likely be interpolated 1080p, and anything that's above $70 will likely be true 1080p. Though once again it's very hard to distinguish, so you definitely have to read the reviews and also get samples of what the camera looks like on YouTube before you buy. And you could see here in this case this is the true 1080p and this video clip here is the interpolated 1080p. And I'll just let it run and give you a little bit longer segment here so you could distinguish the difference between the two. And as you can see, for this you can't really see the signs as clearly and you can't really see the license plates as clearly, though in many cases with these dash cams you are not looking to catch the license plate itself, you're really looking to catch the traffic situation that you're in more so than the actual finer details. So depending on your preference, a interpolated 1080p is still very useful, depending on what your budget is. So do not be discouraged even though this is not true 1080p. Number four is memory card size. So whatever dash cam you choose, you have to be aware of what memory card size it supports. So in most cases they will support at least a 32 gigabyte micro SD card, which records 5.5 hours of 1080p high definition video. And for most people the 32 gigabyte will be sufficient simply because these dash cams do loop recording, meaning it will produce several files of 5 minutes each, and what will end up happening is it will simply overwrite or delete the oldest file. So 32 gigabytes recording 5.5 hours typically is sufficient. I actually like to buy the 64 gigabyte and be able to record 12 hours because a high quality 64 gigabyte these days are about $15 for even name brands such as SanDisk. And what I often like doing is powering the dash cam using an external power bank or external battery during situations where I am parked for long durations. So I will be using it as basically as a parking monitor and having it record constantly while being powered by the battery pack within my car. So I like to use the 64 gigabyte because for that extensive period of time it could record 12 hours, and a 128 gigabyte obviously can record twice as much as that, which is 24 hours. Number 5 is just a miscellaneous bunch of tips. So you'll see some features such as parking monitor, motion detection, and gravity sensing. And what those miscellaneous features are is basically it's trying to detect when it should record. So for parking monitor, if there is any slight vibration or hit to your vehicle, it'll start recording. With motion detection, if it senses some motion, it'll start recording. And with gravity sensing, if it senses some shock, it will actually try to keep the video that is being recorded at that time and saving it. Now, every one of those features causes some issues, mainly that from all the reviews that I've read and from personal experience, it'll cause a lot of file corruption during the recording of the video, which renders a lot of the video useless. So it turns out that a lot of people will turn that off, and even for later firmware, those features have been removed. So my recommendation is to not get or make your decisions based on those 3 features, but simply what you really want to do is you just want to get a card, as I mentioned, that records 12 hours straight or 24 hours straight, and be able to refer back to it when the incident happens. And that is the safest approach that I have seen and the most stable approach to actually getting the camera working as expected. So number 6 is the temperature and heat, and this is often overlooked when you're getting a dash cam, is you don't consider the heat. But when you think about it, this dash cam is placed on your dash, and during the summer months it's really absorbing a lot of heat, and we all know how hot the dash actually gets when the heat is beating down on it or the sun's beating down on it. So you want to get a dash cam that is rated for 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and not all of them will last through the heat. They'll just break apart, or they're not built for the heat, or they're not tested for the heat. So often I will go into the reviews and I'll make sure people in the very hot states or very hot areas have verified that the dash cam that they bought actually survived that summer heat that was in their particular environment. So in my particular case, I got the Rexing V1, and I got it specifically because people said it was able to withstand the heat. But that's really it. That's all I have for tips, and if you find this helpful, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.